Hello, hello. It's Eileen here, and I've got a quick update that I wanted to be sure to share with you before we dive into today's episode. The Resilience Room membership community is going to open its doors for new members Monday, July 28th through Friday, August 1st. If you've been thinking of joining us and want to be sure to be notified when we open, I want to encourage you to join the waitlist. You can do that at go.eileendivine.com/resilience room. That's go.eileendivine.com/resilience room. We only open our doors for new members a few times per year, so if you've been thinking about joining, this is a great time for you to do that. We would love nothing more than to welcome you into our amazing community. So again, you can find all the details and join the waitlist at go.eileendivine.com/resilience room. Okay, on to the episode. He hesitated for a moment, and I could tell he was choosing his words carefully. And he said to me, I am so grateful to be having this conversation, but I can't help but to feel really angry and resentful that this is the first time we're hearing this. We've worked so hard for the last 7 years with so many providers, and we've spent thousands of dollars trying to figure out how to help our son and countless hours, and not one person has ever told us that we need to learn more about how his brain works and how this impacts his behaviors. Hi there, and welcome to the Brain First Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Devine, and I am a therapist, parent coach, and educator who supports parents that are raising children, teens, and young adults with brain-based differences and challenging behavioral symptoms. If you are a parent or caregiver of a child who has intense, confusing, relentless, or sometimes even scary behaviors, you are in the right place, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Brain First Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Devine, and I am so thrilled to be at this point where I'm recording this first episode. It's out into the world and having this additional opportunity to connect with parents just like you. I have been thinking about this podcast for a really long time. I am a lover of podcasts myself. It's how I listen to a lot of content and consume information. And so it's been tugging at me for, at least a year. If you could see my office, you would see Post-it notes with ideas, a whiteboard where I've been brainstorming, a notebook where I've been writing down topics that I know matter to parents like you. So I am so happy to be here. I'm so excited for what is to come with this podcast and having this additional way to connect with you all. And I am just so grateful that you are here. I wanted to use this first episode just to introduce myself a bit more fully so you have a better sense of who I am, how I came to this work, who my family is, because it is a very important part of the work I do in my story, and also give you some information about Brain First Parenting. Like, why does it exist? How did it come to be? What is the mission for Brain First Parenting, and what is my hope for it? So that's what I hope to spend a little bit of time with you on today. So I live in the Great Pacific Northwest. I live in Portland, Oregon. I've been married to my wonderful partner, Dave, for just over 20 years. We have 2 kids. They're both teenagers. Our oldest is our son, Connell. He is 17. So he's a junior in high school. He is our biological child, and Connell is what society would consider neurotypical, meaning his brain works exactly as society expects it to. We also have a daughter, Maya. She is almost 16. She's a sophomore in high school, and Maya was adopted at birth. Maya was born with a serious and permanent brain-based difference or disability. Her diagnosis is Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, FASD, which means she was prenatally exposed to alcohol, and that alcohol impacted her brain development prenatally. I have thought many times over the years, as I reflect back on my own personal journey and learning how to parent Maya differently than my son Connell, that I had this advantage of having two kids who were very similar in age. They're only 15 months apart. So it allowed me this almost side-by-side comparison in terms of development. So really early on, we understood that Maya's development was not typical. She and Connell were on two very different paths developmentally. And although she had challenges from the start of her life, from day one, it was really when she was about 3 or 4 years old that Dave and I both began to notice that her development wasn't typical in a very particular way. She was becoming more and more of a challenge behaviorally, far beyond the typical challenges of a 3 or 4-year-old. So I remember really clearly talking with others in our lives about this at the time. And oftentimes the feedback that I would get, well, Eileen, 3 and 4-year-olds, like they're just difficult. That's just a challenging age. And I was like, yeah, I know that, but this is challenging. This is not typical. So Dave and I, we weren't sure exactly what to do. We did the only thing that we knew, which was giving her more of the same, meaning we continued to do all of the good things that we were doing with my son to promote connection and secure attachment and support his development. We, of course, did those things with my daughter. And yet the outcome wasn't the same. We saw his development going as we expected, and hers was not. And we began to feel a little bit lost, maybe hopeless, helpless at times about what we could do about it. So my goal at the time, I will be completely honest, I'm guessing that many of you can relate, was my goal was to do anything that would make her less challenging behaviorally. That was my singular focus. So that's what I went after. That's what I went looking for. Now I want to back up a moment and talk about my clinical work at the time. I was a clinical social worker at this time. I've been a social worker longer than I've been a parent, but I want to be clear, having that clinical background did not help me a whole lot, right? So I was in a very different line of social work, very different line of clinical work, and none of it translated in terms of allowing me to understand her through this different lens or what I could be doing differently to help her. But being a social worker at the time did give me the confidence that I needed in that moment to know that I could figure this out. So whatever that means, hunt down the support that I needed, the resources, I was confident that I could find that. So that kind of did happen. It ultimately did happen. But in that moment, it kind of happened and it kind of didn't. I want to explain that a little bit more. I found books. I listened to podcasts. I talked to very well-meaning providers. And my experience, for the most part, was that those people, very well-intended people, were tone deaf when it came to my experience. So I was given advice, things like, you just need to be more boundaried, or a loving, patient home is really important. You want to have a supportive environment. You want to have consistency. And that wasn't helpful because we were doing all of those things. I did at this time find Diane Malbin's work and Dr. Ross Green and Kristen Neff and Dr. Dan Siegel's work. And that did resonate with me. And it truly transformed the way that I saw my daughter Maya and her behaviors and myself. It's a much longer story than that, but I did find that information during this time. And that is when things began to get better. But even with things getting better, I still felt myself needing more support. So I had this information, it resonated with me, it made sense, and yet it was still super difficult to put into practice day after day, moment after moment in my relationship with her. I still felt myself reaching these stuck points, having some internal resistance at times. There were definitely still tricky situations, even though things had gotten much, much better. There were still tricky situations that would come up with my daughter, and I needed someone to help me walk through what I could be doing differently in those specific situations. So, long story short, this was several years after I found specifically Diane Malbin's work and the others that I mentioned, that I began realizing that making this shift in the way I was seeing my daughter and her behavioral symptoms, which I now saw her behaviors as symptoms, was much more than just seeing her through a different lens. I really had to look inward and see myself through a different lens and understand the full impact of this parenting experience on my emotional, my physical health, and have support in how to care for myself so that I had the endurance I needed to care for her in the way that she required. I needed my own support, and I needed people who truly, truly got it, who understood this really misunderstood parenting experience. So I thought, well, I'm going to go find those people. And that's what I set out to do. But I couldn't find them. I couldn't find my people. I knew they were out there, but I couldn't find them. And so that is really when I decided to seriously consider, and then eventually did, change the focus of my clinical work. I wanted to be able to support those parents who were in that same situation that I found myself in, looking for answers and not understanding how to put it into practice, or maybe not even finding the answers. The reason Brain First Parenting exists is because I do not want you and parents like you and I to suffer unnecessarily simply because you're missing information that is absolutely essential to helping your child. Brain First Parenting also exists so that you can come to believe over time, without any doubt, that things can get better for you and for your family. I was meeting with a couple a few weeks ago. It was our first session together, and they are parents to an 11-year-old boy who struggles in some really big ways behaviorally. And we were talking about the neuroscience research that supports parenting kids like theirs from a Brain First lens. And as I took them through the research, the brain behavior connection and behaviors as symptoms, I could see that light bulbs were going off for them. And they were telling me this just makes so much sense, right? It made so much sense given what they were seeing every day with their son. So I'm thinking, okay, this is good. The pieces are coming together for them. That's, of course, what I want. But as we continued our conversation, I could tell that something was going on for the dad in particular. So it was a mom and a dad that I was meeting with. And so I paused the conversation for a moment and I just asked him, is this still resonating with you? Or are there questions coming up for you? And he hesitated for a moment, and I could tell he was choosing his words carefully. And he said to me, I am so grateful to be having this conversation, but I can't help but to feel really angry and resentful that this is the first time we're hearing this. We've worked so hard for the last 7 years with so many providers, and we've spent thousands of dollars trying to figure out how to help our son, and countless hours, and not one person has ever told us that we need to learn more about how his brain works and how this impacts his behaviors. That was a really powerful moment for me because it brought me right back to more than a dozen years ago now, where I had a very similar realization and reaction when I was learning this information for the first time as a parent. So that leads me back to why I finally got my act together and decided to launch this podcast. My hope in creating this Brain First Parenting podcast is that it will prove to be another layer of support and comfort to you and parents like you, a place where you can learn and grow in your understanding of your child and learn and grow about yourself, equally important, and that it is a place that serves as a reminder that you are never alone in this unique parenting journey. So I want to invite you to join me for each episode as we dive deep into a variety of topics directly related to your unique experience of parenting a child who has a brain-based difference and challenging behavioral symptoms. Before I say goodbye, I wanted to be sure to let you know that this isn't the only way that we can stay in touch. Every week, I pop into the inbox of thousands of other parents just like you with a short note that's focused on various aspects of this unique parenting experience. If that sounds like something that would be helpful to you, you can join my email list by going to my website, eileendivine.com.